Alright guys, Copper Cutlass here. First phase of the big block for the Pontiac. It's a 455 Olds. I did get some background into this. I mentioned in probably one of the other posts that this engine has had quite the life. Took it all apart. The pistons look good. Bores look good. The crank is in really good shape, but a couple of bearings were beat up. The number 3 bearing with the thrust surface is almost wiped out. Thrust checked in at about 20 thou. There was some wear into the thrust area of the crank. Hopefully that's not an issue. If not, then we will have to go hunt for a new crank. Then there was a couple of rods that had heat marks on the mating areas where they come together. Rod side clearances were all good. I checked obviously the thrust, the side clearances. I haven't checked the bores for roundness. This engine did have nitrous sprayed through it at some point from what I was told, and I think that's probably what beat the crap out of the thrust surface. And there was a couple of rod bearings that looked like they had hinting of detonation. The top half of the bearings were pretty worn out. And it was just like 2 of them, not all of them, just 2. So it could have been just a lean condition in those 2 cylinders where it had some detonation. But for the most part, it looks pretty good. It looks like it still has stock rod bolts. So at this point, I'm thinking go ARP bolts, get the rods resized. I'm going to look into what is acceptable with the crankshaft, as I've never encountered a crankshaft with issues like that, where the thrust surface is pretty much wiped out on one side of the bearing and there's some wear on the crank itself. Don't know if we can come back from that one or not. We'll find out. And then obviously this thing had, from what I was told, it was a blown head gasket. My buddy ended up with the aluminum cylinder heads that were on this. I got his old J heads for it. It's got studs. It's got studs for the rocker arms. It's got a nice Ultradyne cam. We're going to reuse. The timing chain actually isn't too bad. It's not super stretched out, as long as we can degree the cam and get it within, a good point with that chain. We're just going to run it because it doesn't have much more stretch than any engine you'd be running for like a year. So yeah, guys, this is, like I said, the first stages of it. We checked a couple things. We wrote down everything as we saw it. There's probably going to be more detailed posts on the Facebook page because it's a lot to mention. But this is the beginning of it. I made one video showing you guys how to pop off the main caps. I've had people ask me about that in the past. It's pretty easy. So yeah, overall, piston skirts look good, bores look good, no ridge. The cylinder heads I'm going to clean up, maybe just relap the valves if everything looks good. I haven't taken the heads apart yet or popped the valves out or anything. But hero of the day is my wife. I got some baking trays that are currently now being used for parts holders. That's my repurposing of junk. She was going to toss them out because they were a little rickety looking. She got new ones. So I grabbed them before they got tossed in the garbage. So there you go, guys. When your wife tosses old cooking utensils, use them for parts holders. The intake is obviously in good shape. I think the one cylinder head has a helicoil where the bolt goes through. But overall, it's not bad. For the life that this engine has had, I thought it'd be worse. Hopefully the crank issue is something that isn't... I know what it's going to cost if I have to put in a good crank that we can reuse, if that's the case. Again, if that's the case, then you get a crank for 150 bucks, but then you got to get it balanced. It's another 350. So it'll be a $500 deal if I got to put a crank in it. That's if it's in good shape and it could just take a polish. If it needs to get ground down, then it goes up from there. So again, and that's on the high side, I budgeted about $2,000 to freshen this thing up, and that's if it needed a crank, if it needed a block. Blocks are cheap. I know I can find one that's already bored. It would probably just need a hone. Again, this is through networking and thinking ahead and seeing what's out there on the forums. So I've budgeted like $2,000 to freshen this thing up. If it's less, great. Don't need to spend money at the moment on this stuff. I got house projects going on, but this is why we're doing all this stuff over the winter. And like I mentioned, I am going to be building a Turbo 400 for it and a diff for the Pontiac as well. So guys, we're going to keep updating you on this project, specifically the engine, the work on the Pontiac, the framework, the rear end, the trans. We're going to be bringing that car up to snuff here. As soon as it gets colder, we're still enjoying it. So guys, stick around. Thanks for following, subscribing. Please share. Give it a thumbs up, guys. Thanks for following.